Our next segment is going to be with Mikala Parnell, who is the outreach coordinator for Representable. Representable is a free online tool. Chris just mentioned it, and Mikala is going to give you a demonstration and talk a little bit about how you can use that tool to advocate for your community of interest, which is now something that is legally required to be considered. So it's a great way to get you and your neighbors involved. So Mikala, thank you so much for being here.
Great, thank you. So as mentioned, my name is Mikala Parnell, and I'm the outreach coordinator for Representable. Chris already gave you a great introduction into what Representable is, but just to give you a little bit more information. So Representable is a free open source tool. It's a mapping tool created to help communities draw their own communities of interest that then can be taken into account in the redistricting process. So communities of interest are something that's a bit new to the redistricting scene, but communities and states are starting to consider them as very important in the map drawing process. But prior to Representable, there were no tools to really get this type of input from communities themselves. So what Representable does is it tries to fill that niche where people can draw their own communities and show where they live and what's important to them in that area. So Representable is actually a student-created tool out of Princeton and partners with the Princeton Gerrymandering Project, as well as Schmidt Futures. And we're currently active in 22 states, including Virginia, and we're always looking to expand and grow and add communities to our tool. So I'm going to go ahead and do a live demo today, but I'm also going to send out some slides. So if you want to know some more information about Representable and what we do, you'll be able to do that as well. And if you have any questions as I go through the live demonstration, please feel free to put them in the question and answer section, and then I will try to answer them after I finish. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully everyone will be able to see. Okay, great. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. Awesome, thank you. So what you're looking at here is the homepage for representable.org. And what I'm going to show you today is just how you would go through the site as a user if you wanted to draw your own community. And I hope that all of you take some time to try this out yourself after this presentation or after this meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and click Get Started. And the first thing you're going to see here is some more information about Representable and how it's helpful again in redistricting and to fight against gerrymandering. One thing that that sets Representable apart from other tools is that we really want to focus on education, not just on the drawing of the maps themselves. So as we go through this website, you'll find quite a few like checkpoints where we try to teach you a little bit more about what communities of interest are and how Representable helps in drawing them. So I'm going to go ahead and click Add My Community today to show you what this looks like. So as you can see, we're looking at a map here. Representable is fully functional in all 50 states, including Virginia, but I'm going to show you my community. So I'm going to draw my community in North Carolina. And then once you click on a state, the first page you're going to come across is a state page. This page is going to tell you more about what redistricting looks like in your state, how Representable helps in your state, the redistricting criteria there, and the communities of interest guidelines in your state. You're also able to access a map of all of the communities drawn in your state. So if for some reason you're really interested to see what communities already look like in Virginia, by going through the Virginia state page, you'd be able to see an aggregate map that shows you all of those maps in tandem with each other. So I'm going to click Start Mapping so you can see what the actual mapping process will look like. Log in here. Okay, great. So the first page that you're going to come across when you're trying to map your community is it's going to ask you for your name and for your address. And we ask for this information so that we're able to verify maps. But if for some reason you're not comfortable sharing your address, as long as the address is within your community, we'll be able to verify it. So it could be an important landmark, just a community building, whatever it is that you choose. Once we click next here, we're able to learn more about what communities of interest are. So here it's telling us it's a geographic area that shares cultural, historic, or economic interests. This is a pretty general definition, and state by state, the specific definition does change, but it gives you some idea of what you're looking for when you go to draw your own map. So here it's telling us that it could include maybe your neighborhood, the area you live in, people you'd want to choose representatives with, or maybe like a local group that's brought together by some type of interest. The next page here is the survey page. This page is also unique to Representable. And what it does is two things. One, it helps the user to kind of think about what it is that they might want to include in their community before they get started with drawing it. So maybe you're not totally sure what a community of interest looks like for you. This gives you some ideas of the types of things that you might want to include. But it's also helpful for when you submit your map to a commission, or if you want to give testimony using your community of interest map, you have some context for what the map looks like. So it's one thing to have a picture of a map and be able to share that, but knowing why it is that you drew that map and what was important about that map to you is additionally really helpful when it comes to the map drawing process and the redistricting process. So as you can see here, there are 4 different categories to fill in: communities, activities and services, culture and historic interests, economic and environmental interests, and then finally community needs and concerns. You don't have to fill in all 4 of these, you only have to do at least one. But if you wanted to know more about what needs to go in these sections, you can always click on the link here and it will give you some guiding questions as well as some examples if you're not quite sure. So for my community, I'm just going to walk you through very quickly what I might want to include. So starting with community activities and services, some things that I might want to include are my church, which is a larger church in my community. I might want to include things like shopping districts. I might want to include parks or a school or anything that I think is a place that people gather or go to get services. So I've already typed it up so you don't have to watch me type here. But these are some of the things that I might want to put in that section. In the next section, we have culture and historic interests. So this is saying like cultural bonds in your community or any type of shared history, maybe a religious, ethnic group, language, age group, immigration group, anything like that. So in my community, I talked a lot about age groups. There's a college in my community, UNCW. So a lot of younger college students live here. There's also a lot of retired individuals in my community and a lot of families who want to live in the school district. So I talked about the large variety of age ranges within my community in this section. The next section we have here is economic or environmental interests. So this could be popular industries, it could be companies that hire lots of people, it could be shared environments. For me, I talked about how I live by the beach, so tourism is really important industry. I talked about the active small businesses, as well as the larger companies that hire people such as GE, PPD, and the medical system. And all of these things could go into this section. And again, these are just examples from my own personal community, but what you put here would really be specific to your own community of interest and what you think is most important in that area. And then finally, this last box, I'm not going to fill out for you guys, but is very important. It's community needs and concerns. This is something new that we've added because a lot of organizations found it to be really helpful. And essentially, it's what it's asking you for are what are things that politicians or map drawers really need to know about your community. So this is things that are maybe needs, something that is a voting issue or a policy concern. Maybe there's a social service that you would like to have in your community or a relationship with other communities that you want to include. So these are the kinds of things that you could include here to, again, give more context to your map for map drawers. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. Next thing it's going to ask us to do is just name our community. And as I mentioned, I live by the beach, so I'm going to name it after the beach I live by. And then finally, we're at the actual map drawing tool. So you'll notice that the tool looks really similar to like Google Maps or like the maps on your phone. And that's because we want the tool to be really simple and easy for everyone to use and access. So we're gonna have the search bar here where we can search for a location. And since I named it after the beach, let's just search there first. And it's gonna take us right to the area that we search. You can just kind of drag around if you wanna look around the map here. And as I'm moving around, you'll notice that these like blocks are highlighting themselves. These blocks are census block groups, which is a unit of the census that we use to create maps on Representable. If you wanted to use a smaller unit, you could click this use smaller units button here, and it would switch you to census blocks, which is an even smaller unit of the census. And these are the 2020 blocks, so these are the newest ones. And in order to create a map, all you have to do is click to highlight the block that you want to include. And if you don't want to include it for some reason, just click again to get rid of it. And as I'm looking around, you can see that it's already highlighting some landmarks. This is the school, for example. You can see waterways, you can see parks. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see restaurants, grocery stores. But if for some reason there's a landmark that isn't being shown, you can always use this search button and it will take you right to it. So I'm going to click on a few census block groups. Maybe I want to include the school. Maybe I want to include some surrounding areas over here. And again, the only real barrier to creating your map is that it has to be contiguous, which means that all of the blocks have to touch. So I'm going to go ahead and select a few more census block groups as an example. And there it is telling me that my map can't include any gaps. So once I think, okay, this is about what I want to include, I can go back and review the information that I put in each of those boxes if I want to make sure that I've included it all. But once I'm done with my map, I will go ahead and click Save and accept the terms to submit my map. So once you've submitted your map, it's not quite over yet. You'll be able to view your map. So first thing you're going to see is this congratulations screen. This screen is going to let you export your map. So you can export it as a PDF, which you could then download. You can print it out. You can email it. You can bring it to one of the commission's sessions, whatever you'd like to do with this map to share it. You can also export it as a GeoJSON file, which is a mapping file. So if you wanted to use some of the other tools that Chris mentioned earlier, such as Dave's redistricting app, Districtar, Maptitude, for example, you'd be able to export your community of interest directly from the site into those map drawing tools to try your hand at drawing a district, for example. And then finally, it's telling you that it sent you an email confirmation that includes your map. Finally, we're at this viewer page. So again, this has the export features that I mentioned before, as well as a link if you want to just share the link directly to your map. You're able to access, again, the information that you put in the survey page. You're able to look at data layers and how they interact with your map. So for example, if you want to see, let's see, precinct boundaries and how they intersect, or if you want to look at maybe state house districts, and if you zoom out, we can see what those look like. All of these pre-existing geographic boundaries can be looked at in the context of the map that you drew. You can also look at election data, and this is the 2018 election data currently, if you want to see how that might interact with your map here. And then we have demographic data, and this information will be ready once we receive the 2020 census data. And then the final thing that you can do here is you can actually submit your map to an organization. So there's already quite a few organizations in Virginia that you can submit your map to. And if you were interested in your map being included in an organization's community mapping drive, so then they could present that information to a commission, for example, you'd be able to submit it right from this page, and then they'd be able to have access to it as well. So this is the whole of Representable from the user's perspective. It's really easy to get started and get set up with this as a user. We also love to work with organizations. So if there's anyone who works with an organization that they think would be really interested in Representable, it's also very simple to get started from our site. And I'll show you really quickly just how to do that using this Partner with Us button here right on the homepage. And so we really presented this tool as a free tool that will continue to be free. In a attempt to really introduce just the general public to communities of interest and give them that voice in the redistricting process that they really didn't have prior to this redistricting cycle. And we're so happy that Virginia and OneVirginia specifically has really jumped on using this tool and spreading it to others. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put that in the Zoom box and I will try to answer them. But also if you have any questions outside of this session, you can email us at team@representable.org and we're able to answer questions there as well. So I don't want to take too much time up, and I know we have quite a few other sessions here, but again, I'll send the slides to Liz to share out to everyone. And thank you so much for letting me present here today.